Okay, so now that my mandala, which has radial balance, I didn't really explain this well last video. So radial balance is when you have something in a center point and the design radiates out from that center point. Again, that's called radial balance. So we have other kinds of balance too. Within this radial balance design, again, that's the symmetrical balance, where it's the same on each side. But then asymmetrical balance because each pie piece has a different design that is asymmetrical. So this isn't the same as that, and these are in different places, and these aren't the same also. Okay, so lots of different kinds of balance going on in there. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to start mixing your colors. So you've already mixed your practice colors, trying to figure out how you're going to paint this design, what kind of color. Look at that practice and figure out which colors sort of look good together. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get 2 of these little salsa cups, which are going to be paint cups, and you're going to write your name. So I would write Hage, and I would write whatever period you're in, like second period, and then I would write tint on one of them, and then the other one I'm going to do the same thing. So Hage, second period, and instead of writing tint on this one, I'm going to write shade. So I'm going to have my tint and my shade. Now you're going to be using these little cups throughout this painting process, and each time you make a new color, you're going to have to wash it out in the sink or in the buckets that are outside. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to mix enough of a color so that you can, look, there's a lot in here. Okay, this is the tempera paint. Again, it should say the word tempera paint, not the acrylic. I mixed a red violet and then I added a little bit of yellow to it because I wanted it to be kind of more of a browner violet color. And when you mix in all three primary colors together, you get it brown. When you mix complements, you get these kind of warm browns. They all look a little different. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scoop some of this over, half of it, in order to have half for my tint and half for my shade. Now, I shouldn't be doing this over my drawing, but for demonstration purposes and having everything on the table, I am. Okay, that's about half. Okay, so the next thing you need to do is create your tint and shade. Now you don't want them to be too different, so start with just like a little splash of both, and I have a brush for mixing my tint and a brush for mixing my shade. I don't want it to be a really, really dark shade, and I don't want it to be a really, really light tint. I kind of want it to be evened out. So I'm going to just start with a drop of the white over here, and let's see how that ends up looking. So that didn't change too much, but that's why we do a drop at a time, because we can always add more in, but we cannot take it out. So I'm going to go ahead and add another drop in. It's a little bit bigger of a drop. I'm going to mix that in. Now it's starting to change a little bit. You can see how it's starting to change from that original color. I still want it to be a little bit lighter. It's not quite there yet. Again, this is sort of just a process where you have to just be patient and see what you get. And that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so that would be my tint of that color. Now, black is very, very strong, so you don't need a lot of black. I'm actually going to do a little tiny bit more for my tint. See, this is why we don't do it over artwork, because we get messy. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to push this off to the side and see if I want to add in more later. And now I get my black, and I'm going to add a little bit of black, just one drop. If you need help getting a drop, let me know and I will help you. Okay, so like little tiny drop. And I'm gonna mix that up, and black is really strong, so it's gonna change it pretty quickly. Like already, if I show you guys these, there's a pretty good significant difference between those. I might do a little bit of an extra drop of black. That was a lot. So we can see the difference pretty well. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing is every other one, we're gonna be painting a tint and then a shade, a tint, a shade, a tint, a shade, a tint, a shade. It should work out perfectly because there are 8 pieces. Whatever I paint this color, I'm going to end up painting, I'm just gonna scrape off. I'm gonna end up painting the whole thing that color. So if I choose, for example, the background as this color, which is I mixed the background first, I would paint the tint all through here, tint all through here, tint all through here, tint all through here, and then I would paint my shade, okay? So I actually don't need these big brushes because I want to work with a smaller brush first. So what I'm doing is kind of like scraping off, not on the edge, but kind of like inside edge, so I don't get it messy. So when I put this on, I don't have a lot of paint around the rim like I do already, which I want to wipe off. So when I do clean up, it's not a super messy cleanup, kind of clean as I go along. And because I'm going to start with my tint first, I'm going to close up my shade and I'll put it off to the side there. Okay, so I'm going to grab an angled brush. It's a flat brush, which means that it's mostly flat, right? But then it has this little angle. A flat brush will work. You can even use a round brush, whatever you're comfortable with. I just kind of like this smaller brush that has an angle. And then you start painting. So you want to, you're probably gonna have to do a couple different layers. If you look at this, you don't wanna see like streaks, and it shouldn't look like watercolor. You shouldn't see any paper underneath. So you're probably gonna have to do a couple different layers as you go along, and that's why you have quite a few days to paint this. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut this video off, and you can go to the next video and you can see how I've painted a tint, a shade, a tint, a shade of this first color.